One of the delights of the year is working with Ray Chang and running the award program, the MIT Sloan CIO Leadership Award Program. And every year we choose between 3 and 5 panelists who are doing just incredible, incredible things. And then we get to run a panel here so you can see some of the incredible things they're doing. So each of these finalists here is on this panel, and they're going to do something else during the symposium also. And my job is really very easy. It's to set the conversation up and get out of the way so you can hear what they have to say. So what I'll do is I'll walk down the list here with each of the finalists and just ask an opening question, and we'll go from there. Okay. So why don't we start here with Wafaa, if you can introduce yourself. And the question is, what are you most proud of that you've been doing in your current role as a CIO?
Fantastic. And great to be here in person with some of you in the room and virtual as well with those remote. My name is Wafaa Mamilli. I'm the Chief Information and Digital Officer at Zoetis. So think about who's Zoetis. So if you have a pet, you drink milk, you eat eggs, or any sort of meat, you know us, we're in your home, and we're glad to serve you, your pets, your vets, and the dairy farmers and the farmers who give us all that meat as well, and milk and eggs we eat. My role has enterprise tech, has digital as well. I'm sure we'll get to talk about that, has cybersecurity, data, and analytics. One of the things I'm the most proud of we did over the last 2 years or year and a half is powering the full organization, so internal and external, with the power of technology and data. So we equipped our sales operations, our insider sales, our teams with the right insights about customers to make sure that they know in every interaction how to engage on what purpose in that conversation with the teams, and make sure that all the teams are in sync with that customer obsession at the middle. And I'm proud because as we did this, it's one of the use cases, the many use cases we delivered throughout the enterprise. We did this in a platform-driven approach, meaning we're delivering for this specific use case, we're enabling others and getting ready to deliver on many more faster and in a more agile way.
Thank you, thank you. Next up, Manoj.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, great to see many of you, and great to meet this esteemed panel who is here with me. I'm global CIO of Kimberly-Clark. We're a $20 billion company. Again, just like Wafaa said, that we also, our brands are in your homes. So Huggies, if you have a baby at home, so Huggies brands, Kleenex, Scott Paper, Kotex, and Depend, those are some of our flagship brands. I've been at Kimberly-Clark 6 years. I've been what I call a CPG lifer. Spent quite a bit of time at PepsiCo. Prior to that, I worked at a number of companies, also in the consumer space, and then 6 years at Kimberly-Clark. The area, the focus of our group and our digital transformation has truly been around driving the growth for the company. Historically, Kimberly-Clark has been a very cost-focused company, and we knew that we needed to change that dynamics, and we needed the growth. So truly, over the last 4 years, we've been truly focused on top-line growth. So it's building those commercial capabilities, very similar to you, Wafaa, right? How we engage with the consumers in a very personalized manner, having the first-party data, the personalized consumer experiences, how we connect with our customers, how do we optimize trade spend optimization or retail execution with our customers, how we help them build categories. And data and analytics at the center of every change we are making. And so this commercial transformation has been going on for almost about 4 years now. And we are live in many of our markets. We generally, when we build a capability, we try and roll it out across 30 or so of our key markets. And those are, they could be anywhere in the globe, from China, Korea, to North America, to Canada, UK, Australia, so on and so forth. The other element, I would say, which is also another big transformation which is underway, which is around digital core transformation, is how we're retiring all of our ERPs. We have 5 ERPs, and we're going to a single ERP, standardizing business processes. And again, data at the center of, so putting in the master data governance, also the end-to-end analytics. And then lastly, I'll also talk about supply chain capabilities. Supply chain has been in news for a while, I think, and every CPG has been, and retailer has been impacted with some of the supply chain challenges. So our goal is, how do you connect end-to-end that supply chain, and which is rapid responsive, and it's autonomous supply chain. That's the mission we are on. That's very much in the journey. We're not fully there yet, but that's our vision, and that's what we're looking forward to.
Thank you. James.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to have a chance to chat with you again. Delighted to be here with this esteemed panel. Very much looking forward to this afternoon. So I'm the CIO at Liberty Mutual Insurance, based here in Boston. We're a Fortune 70 company with about $45 billion in revenue. We operate in some 35, 36 countries around the world. And normally when we're trying to describe the product set, we're in the property and casualty business. So everything from bicycles to satellites, all the homes and cars and commercial businesses in between. And we operate in 3 major business units. We have one business unit is our global personal lines unit. So think about your auto, home, and umbrella products. And then we also have a global risk solutions business, which is our commercial business, which we operate in all around the world. Mostly in the US, we deal with our customers through a number of different omni-channel interaction models, so direct to consumer through our web and application and mobile app platforms. And we also deal extensively through independent agents and brokers all around the world. So different countries have a bias towards one or other of those channels. We're a regulated business, which means we have to be very careful about how we price and what we use to price. And a little bit like Manoj and Wafaa have talked about so far, we really use data to be a major part of how we interact with our customers, everything from the customer interactions, customer experience, but also to try to make it easy for customers to do business. So we'd love to ask our customers, what they had for breakfast and whether they had honey or sugar on the cornflakes or whatever it was. But really, our customers want to come to us, give us the minimum amount of information, get a quote, and decide if they like to do business with us or not. Clearly, in order to have the optimal outcome, we need to have a slick, sophisticated, and simple interface to operate, whether it's digitizing our direct-to-customer experience or indeed digitizing the interaction model with our independent agents, our brokers, and of course our employees. Don't forget that. We have about 50,000 employees around the world, and some 5,000 plus of those are technology employees, about half in the US and half elsewhere. But so our focus is very much the same, using data and digital to give our customers the best possible service that they could have. So, what am I most proud of? I think that I'm most proud of the fact that about 7 or 8 years ago, we began a series of interconnected journeys. So we began a journey to the public cloud. We began a journey towards agile at scale. We began a journey to make sure that we were securing that we had the best possible security posture. We began in earnest a journey linked to ESG, right? So environmental, social, and governance, with a major part of that being our diversity, equity, and inclusion approach. And all of these different journeys are interrelated. I think we figured out early on in the process that any one of those journeys on their own was not going to get us where we needed to be. And in fact, by advancing those journeys in parallel, we basically get a multiplier effect. So if you're using the cloud and you're using it in an agile way and you're using data and analytics to drive insights, you get a multiplier, rather than, okay, let's just do one journey and then we'll come back for the others at a later point. So I'm very proud of that. The other things, and George, I'll mention it really quickly because you told us just not to belabor it, but I'm super proud of the fact that within one week or a week to 10 days, we were able to move from people working in the offices to everybody online all around the world. And that was a pretty amazing feat when it wasn't just the virtual part of it, it was making sure that we got PCs to people in far lands where they couldn't get them and so forth, and connecting everybody up. So I thought that went really well. And it's funny how people forget how we used to work, and that these days it's taken as, oh, that's take for granted, right? But it sure wasn't two years and a little bit ago, right? So I'm very proud of that. And the other thing I'm super proud of working at Liberty Mutual is I think over the last 2 years, our company really doubled down on focus on the communities in which we operate, and made extra efforts to be there for not just our employees to make them feel like we were focused on keeping them safe, but all the less fortunate folks in all the communities we operate with around the world, and tried to help people kind of get through the worst of the pandemic. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, thank you. And then last but definitely not least is Vagesh.
Good afternoon. First of all, thanks to MIT CIO, volunteers, the panel's organizer. This is a great event, and finally, glad to be back in person. My name is Vagesh Dave. I'm a global VP and CIO for McDermott. McDermott is a premier integrated end-to-end provider from engineering, construction, energy solutions to our customers in a very sustainable way. And currently, we are very proud to be helping them with energy transition. Now, I won't repeat some of the things that my colleagues talked about, but McDermott, I call it 90-plus-year-old startup. When customers want something complex done, whether that's in engineering space, construction space, they come to us. So innovation and thinking differently is in our blood. And that culture has permeated through the years. We were the first one to think about digital twin and applying those to collaborate better with our customers, to have our employees collaborate themselves because we are global. We are engineers sitting in London and Chennai, Indonesia. How do you bring them together? They're working on a single project for our customers. And then how do you have them collaborate with a customer who's sitting in Middle East or somewhere in Brazil? So very early on, we were embarking on this journey of bringing folks together, using tools, and pandemic just allowed us to accelerate some of those. But when you just look at the business we are in, it's a people business. We build things. So how do you really enable the organization that's working in the physical locations to now work virtually? How do you give the experience to the engineers sitting in a suburb of India or Indonesia, same experience you give to the engineers sitting in London? So a lot of those things, my team worked day and night, behind the scenes, expanding capacity, providing with technology, and really accelerating that is something we are very proud of. And we've done this while creating a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, with a keen focus on employee health and bringing them together while they're working remotely. How do you really foster innovation in that environment? And the management of the company, the board, has been very supportive in really investing in some of those initiatives that drove innovation, even during pandemic.
Great, thank you, thank you. As you can see, really accomplished people, and they only had a few minutes to tell their stories, so many more stories to tell here. But I also want to just pick your brains for advice and thinking about other topics. One of the things that we've noticed the last few years is that CIOs are now attaching the word digital often, either their titles or their organizations. And we actually have two of you who have done that in your titles. And so the question is, why? And is it the right thing to do? Should we be chief information officer? Should we treat digital officers chief information and digital? Or is this digital just something that's a fun word that we should not talk about anymore? So Vagesh, you're one of these people with the digital in your name. So why did you put digital in your name?
So I don't, but.
Up there? Oh, sorry, wait a second.
First two.
The first two, sorry about that. Manoj, you're the digital.
It's the other way around, yeah.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, I'm happy to jump in, and Wafaa, obviously feel free to add. I'd say no longer are we expected the IT services which we all delivered for decades and decades, like that's considered table stakes, right? I think what the CEOs and the executive team is looking for a digital officer to do is to think like a strategic business leader, to be able to weigh in on top-line growth topics, on how do you drive cost savings, or how do you drive consumer-customer intimacy, or new sources of revenue, right? For all of those types of topics, they want, whether it's CDIO, Chief Digital Officer, Information Officer. I've even seen, George, now Chief CDITO officers, which includes transformation. Also, so they expect that you are driving the holistic business transformation, and topics which are data and technology and cyber. Obviously, that's taken for granted, but you are weighing in on business issues that you're fully fluent. You are a strategic voice in the executive team, as well as you are weighing in on enterprise topics related to top-line growth. So, as well as new sources of revenue, and that's sort of the pivot. If you are truly able to add value in the executive team on those topics, then I feel like yes, the digital officer is a more broader role that you're playing.
Yeah, and I will take some blame for this, because when we wrote our book, Leading Digital, and started talking about this digital transformation stuff, we said you need a chief digital officer. So I'll take partial blame for this. I don't know whether it's a good thing or bad thing. Okay, Vagesh, tell us why you don't need digital in your name.
Yeah. I think frankly, like you mentioned, when you're in technology, you're really helping across the landscape. There's digital IT, and the true story is, you look at my title, Global Vice President and CIO, adding digital just made it like too long. Just say, let's keep it simple.
Yeah, anybody else want to weigh in on this?
I would say, so I would say one of my pet peeves for a long time has been that I am a business leader that happens to have technology accountability, full stop. I've always behaved that way. I've always showed up that way. So digital is an extremely exciting part of my role, and different companies will have different solutions. I don't know what the right answer. It depends on the culture and where the company is. I have digital in my title. I have digital proudly in my responsibilities. In addition, it's the end, and I don't underestimate the other side of the T and the cyber and the data and all the stuff that we don't want to talk about, but we still have to do, and it's extremely critical, and I'm proud of the teams who do that work. Digital is about additional and new sources of revenue, full stop. For me, it's that simple. It's taking that outside in view, customer obsessed, product innovation. What can we create? Not add revenue to existing things, like the example I shared. Not enhance whatever and add to core. No, real additional sources of revenue where they become digital products we launch to the market that create that additional revenue for the company, while doing everything else that enhance profitability, engage colleagues, does keep security, privacy, all of the rest still and remains extremely critical, even more these days. I feel any of you who sit in a CISO or a CIO, CIDO job boards want to talk about cybersecurity. Feels like almost every month right now, and rightly so.
But George, I would argue that, just like technology for CIO, digital is table stakes. It's no longer something that you argue, okay, does it CIO, does it to do? I think every company, the way business is done, you look at born digital companies, or you call it digital native, it's still business. And they have a different model than traditional companies, but it's making more and more pervasive for more and more companies.
So what I'm hearing is that either one can be the right decision for your organization, but part of it is also messaging. What kind of signal are you supposed to be trying to send about your organization? Does that sound right?
I agree with that, George. I actually think that the word digital is more about that than a lot of things. I think it's allowed companies to kind of reinvigorate their approach to automation and applying technology to where you're trying to get to and so forth. honestly, I think that it's more of a moniker than most things. I go back to one of the first books I read. I'm sure you remember Nicholas Negroponte's book, Being Digital. You recall that? That's not today or yesterday, right? But digital, at the end of the day, it's ones and zeros. So everybody has a slightly different definition for what it means in terms of digital transformation. But I agree a little bit with Vagesh on the fact that the digital moniker is more of a bias towards the business enablement and customer experience and infusing the data and analytics, whereas many legacy information technology organizations or departments or wherever you call them were traditionally more focused on the back office, the data centers, the storage and computers and all that stuff. That hasn't been the case for a very long time, though. And I know there are still some organizations kind of trying to leapfrog into the new mode of digital, but I think we've been there for a long time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So let's jump to another word that we all know, and we're all trying, but we're all doing it differently, and that's Agile. Every IT unit is trying to do Agile. Some are doing it differently than others. Some are, though, able to take it from just in IT to being totally making the entire company Agile. So if I could ask you in your group, how have you been able to make Agile the best it can be in your culture, in your company? Anybody that wants to do that?
Yeah, I can go first. I think we wanted to, as part of our company's transformation, we brought in Bain to help us with the sort of putting in the foundation of the transformation, which is to reset our operating model and to drive growth and so on and so forth. But one of the core tenets was the enterprise agility. Has less to do with technology and how we think of it, how we think of agility, but it has to do with the mindset of how decisions get taken, how we collaborate. There is a big cultural element of collaboration, trust with the business and technology teams. So it's very much around decision making. It's very much around the culture in which how you collaborate, the trust and the care you show up within the working teams. All of that are all the key tenets which we started out at the enterprise level. Now, on the other hand, the DTS group, which I lead, Digital Technology Solutions, have always been at the forefront of agile transformation. And then thereafter, we moved on to product teams formation and working closely with our business counterparts to create those product teams. So, and while all of these transformations happened, some at the enterprise level and some and all of our leaders, business leaders, and the top 200 leaders in the company are very much familiar with why are we doing Agile, what's their role in shaping the company's transformation and Agile at the core of it. And I would say we've been reasonably successful. So when we go back and ask for product managers from the business who have the role to strategically steer the capabilities we build, they are very much partnering and working with us in that agile ways of working because they have been part of the company's agile transformation and the thinking. So I would say it's and in some areas it works better than the others. So even within our own transformation, when we think about commercial transformation, and it's working really, really well, but in supply chain transformation and back-end functions like ERP, et cetera, while we work in sprints, but it's not fully 100% agile from a traditional sense.
And why is that?
It's more because there is a longer lead time for those programs still. So we operate in sprints, but the go-lives don't happen every 2 weeks. So that's the reason. So we still operate somewhat in a agile manner, so waterfall, but agile as a way of working.
Yeah, I can talk about our approach to it. So agile ways of working is definitely one of our pillars in our transformation. But we made a few key decisions. Number one, that it's about mindset. So we have an enterprise digital fluency program, available enterprise-wide, and agility is one core element of that. We have 4 big modules. This is one, and it is, in fact, the one that that was the most taken, in fact, throughout the company, and it's a pull versus a push. So we were very, very happy to see that. Number 2, we made the decision that we're not going to be talking, at least not in my company at Zoetis, about an enterprise agility program. I just didn't think that was reasonable for where we are. So I call that we were strategic and very practical. And we chose 4 major areas where we went agile full steam. And we made the decision at the same time that we will never deploy agile in the technology function without everyone. So whatever we do horizontally across the enterprise between all the teams. So aligning at the executive level about which areas we want to deploy agility in and go full steam was a key conversation we had. And once we aligned, we drove it, and we're still driving it. It's a journey horizontally to deploy. So again, focused, but still strategic, and we have a team that's driving consistency, so that it's not agile and different terminology and things like that, but the focus in those areas, and we just made the decision to add a 5th one, and the 4 are not yet done. We're adding a 5th one, and most of the first 4 tend to be product-oriented, so they were digital products, or they were customer-facing, so it really played well. The teams worked really, really well. There was one team that struggled, but that struggle was more about leadership and mindset than anything else. So we went on an intervention, in fact, from the executive level on mindsets and leadership and behaviors to address what was happening and what's happening in that team. But those are kind of the key tenets. But we talk about it as agile ways of working enterprise-wide and in a focus area versus enterprise-wide, I meant to say.
You know, you both mentioned the idea also making sure that your outside of IT is involved also. The first question I ask when anybody says they're doing Agile is I say, so how are you getting those business side involved? And I'm surprised how often I hear, well, we haven't quite gotten them involved yet, so we're doing Agile without them. And that's not Agile, right?
That's not Agile. We don't do that.
There needs to be more. And yet other ones, our winner from last year, Vipin Gupta at Toyota has been able to take Agile and move it all the way up. So actually the senior team of the organization has a weekly stand-up in Agile format with people around where they can point and say, who's got that one? Who's going to fix that one? Just like you'd expect, but they're doing it with the CFO and the business unit chiefs and others, which I think is a really interesting idea.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, George. I think the other piece we haven't touched on is I think that there are a number of critical aspects of Agile, right? So we probably have about 400 Agile teams right now, but they're all operating at different levels of maturity, right? One of the things that we focused on, to your point, was we insisted that our business take that journey with us, and it was painful, right? So when we started it some 7-8 years ago, we relayed out all the roles on the team. There was no direct model that allowed some of the legacy business analyst roles to find exactly what they were going to do. Many of the roles had involved significant reskilling and retraining. So it was, I'd say the first year and a half was super painful, but we got through it, and again, a lot was based on the fact that the executive team were bought in. At the same time, in technology, we needed to make sure, obviously, that we had all of the DevSecOps pipelines set up, because that's fundamental to making sure that you can do your deployments and automatically do the code scanning and security scanning and all that stuff. So we evolved that at the same time. And I think now the key thing is, well, how do you do it at scale with teams of teams and scrum of scrums and all those different types of things that we've been focused on. And I'd say that we're not fully mature across the board. We have some teams that are definitely further along than others. Many teams are now adopting, significant, metrics like the DORA metrics and all these type of things to really get to understand what the data says about velocity, speed, quality, and all of those type of things. So we're feeling like we're beginning to hit our stride and going faster and faster, and we now have the data to support it as well.
Maybe, George, I will maybe call out one more thing at the enterprise level. So we are, as an enterprise, driving a culture transformation. And as part of that, we are coming up with new values and new ways of working. And one of the ways of working, there are 4 of them, but one of them is move fast. And we were very deliberate in not calling it agile. It was just, but it's move fast. So it's a key tenet of how the values and the ways of working of every cashier, the 44,000, how they are supposed to operate. And moving fast is one of that. For us at the leadership level, it's agility in decision making. Are we removing barriers to execution so our teams can move fast? But everyone else is also living up to the same tenets of moving fast and being agile.
You mentioned culture, and that's one of the things that also we're hearing a lot. Well, maybe there's a bias because when you talk about changing your culture, not IT, that it makes it more interesting to us in the first place. But you're all driving a culture change in your organization too. You started first with one of the values is speed,
yep.
Right? And certainly our research on building digital culture in traditional companies, the values matter. And we talk about speed and impact instead of profits. We talk about openness to work with anybody. If you can, any of you that are driving this cultural change, how do you, for somebody else that wants to drive culture change, how do you start and how do you push this culture change across? Anybody want to jump on that?
Yeah, I would say I'll share examples from Zoetis' side. Our values, which we call our core beliefs, help us. They haven't changed. Run it like you own it, be customer obsessed, colleagues make a difference, and doing the right thing. So none of it have changed. What we've been doing is making sure that we walk the talk. I think the biggest opportunity we have that we tackled, we're not done, we're never going to be done, is an opportunity of empowerment. An opportunity of empowerment, but we have to behave in such a way. We have to make sure that we drive the decisions to the lowest level possible, but we give them the context. And James, you mentioned team of teams. I'm a fan of that, of those concepts with shared consciousness. How do we give them the full context so that they make the decisions at the lowest level possible? And we are okay with that. And if we want to be engaged in that discussion, we go in the team meetings or in the stand-ups or whatever they are, so that speed gets aligned. The other side of regulated businesses, we are a regulated business. We make drugs, vaccines, and devices that treat animals, and some of them we are companions, others we eat. So we want to make sure that doing the right things, we have the right empowerment to make those right decisions at the pace that's needed, and that failure is okay. That's part as well of how do you drive. That's part of the culture, and be okay where failure is acceptable. Failure is not acceptable in SOX compliance. And we spend time with the teams explaining that to them. There is an acceptable and there is an outstanding HBR article and research by Gary Bisano, who we use a lot inside Zoetis to talk about acceptable or non-acceptable failure. But in places where it's acceptable, if you move fast, you're going to make mistakes, fine. You're going to learn from them, move forward, and then pivot or drop the idea altogether. So those two aspects and continue to be critical in how we're driving culture, but people watch what we say, what we do, not what we say.
I think you're saying something really important too, is that these values and practices, they have to align together. And you can't have speed without giving the autonomy, have the wide swim lanes for people to act in there. But when they hit the edge of the swim lane, they need to know, they need to talk to somebody. So these all need to work together. You can't just choose one and work on it. So any other thoughts on that?
So George, I'll talk about McDermott. One of the core values we have is one McDermott way. And that starts from the top. So early on, one thing we realized during 18 months of pandemic, people working remotely, how do you bring them together, collaborate, and innovate? So we embarked upon an initiative called Engage to Inspire, where we brought in people everywhere, employees from all different countries, coming together virtually and really just collaborating on innovation exercises, or we give them challenges. We didn't tell them what to do, just say, pick a business challenge and see if you can work on it, whether that's related to IT, that's related to business, and doesn't have to be what the solution has to be. It could be far out there. They all came together, and we finally picked top 3 that we funded, and we're implementing that. But the key thing is around collaboration. And when you sit at McDermott in the room, you can't tell who's HR, who's IT. We work together. And that one team, one McDermott way is very, very strong. It just from every outset, top to bottom. And that's important. like Wafaa said, you got to walk the talk. Everybody has to see that. They'll see how you act, and more than they'll listen to you.
Yeah, very, very similar. I'll just say that given the transformation, in many ways, technology function was leading the transformation, at KC at one point. And I will say that the key tenets we wanted to, and the experiences we wanted to provide to our associates within DTS was around growth mindset, focus on outcomes, fail fast. Those were the key beliefs and the key experiences. But we knew that as a leadership team, we were not prepared. And to know that, and a lot of the people who were my direct reports, they all used to be my peers. So we needed to show up to leadership team with one voice and this whole one McDermott way, right? Similar to that, right? Just how are we showing up with one as a one team mindset? Are we all? What is the shadow we are casting, right? Are we coming up? Are we watching our mood as we come into these big meetings and reviews, and when we are dealing with a lot of when we are working with our teams? So it was the leadership behaviors were very, very important. We focused almost about 6 to 8 months, focused on how do we want to show up, and we crafted our culture and the values and the things which we thought were important. And before we took it to the next level, which is directors and then senior managers and so on. But it took us almost 2 years to roll that culture initiative out. And I think that was fairly successful because the teams believe that this time the change is real and the leaders are truly living and showcasing it, living up to the, as you said, right, walking the talk, right? So absolutely, that's so important if you truly want to drive a culture change.
There's an interesting question here. By the way, if you have questions, put them in Slido, and they will pop up on the screen in front of us so we can see them. There's an interesting question about this leadership question, and that's that many great CIOs have zero technical background, and yet they still become really great CIOs. So how could that possibly be? Well, what is it about the business people that they can come in and run a technology organization and still make it super? Just any thoughts?
I think it's about knowing the business, knowing the customers, knowing what matters, how value is created in the company that business people bring, and maybe the art of asking the questions. And I can relate to my own experience. I became CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, with zero knowledge of cybersecurity. I mean, zero. I did not know what the NIST cybersecurity framework was. And I was voluntold to the job, one of the best assignments I had. I knew the business, I knew the risk framework, I knew how it was at Eli Lilly, my previous employer. And I became really good at seeking help. That's the other thing, where I sought help from all the CISOs, some of them in the room very likely now as well, and one of them is here. But I was very good at asking the questions. And that skill helped me and saved me and allowed me to perform, I think, quite well in my CISO job. So I read the question there on the panel, and I've been thinking about it. So I think it's that side of knowing the context and asking the right questions. And of course, with good leadership and all experiences that everyone has and those business leaders have, you get a sense, you start to connect dots, and you're a learner yourself. I am pretty sure that those business leaders, they go and learn technology. I know some of them, they go and work hard during their weekends and evenings on learning enough of the technology side, just like I did for cybersecurity. Did I become expert in cyber? Never, and I wasn't wanting or even expecting I would become, but I became good enough to be able to connect the dots and ask those questions. I think that's the power that the business leaders bring, and many of them come from the commercial side, if you notice, and I think they bring the customer obsession. I learned from so many of them what it is to be customer obsessed, and I think technology leaders don't spend enough time with customers.
I just kind of, a couple of perspectives on that. I think that clearly people can make a transition from one type of role to another. I think, as Wafaa mentioned, it takes a huge amount of effort and learning and understanding that you don't know and so forth. You're right, there are some great CIOs and technology leaders who have come from the business, but I think it's an uphill battle myself. I think that if you haven't cut your teeth on some of the basics of technology and math and software engineering and design and all those things, you can learn it, and you can learn it to the degree that you can be conversant in it. I just worry that you understand the implications deep enough about what can be done and what's difficult and what's not difficult. And, so I'm not saying it's not possible. I don't think it's the norm. But yes, there are some examples for sure.
And James, I'm wondering, does it work for those because they have amazing technology leaders working in their teams under them? Would that be a way?
Yeah,
that's how I think they all mitigated that, is they have amazing sort of CTOs or something like that in their teams.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that oftentimes when you see a business leader make the transition to be a CIO or a technology leader, it comes with making sure that you have the right team who that new leader can rely on and trust to do things that maybe they're not going to be an expert in. So, maybe this is a silly analogy, but, I wouldn't want to become the chief legal officer, Now, could I go off and learn a ton of legal stuff? I could, but I still think I'd prefer to be dealing with a lawyer on an attorney who's been an expert in those areas, right? So it's not impossible, but I think,
George,
it's not easy.
That's a key, a leader who listens.
Yeah.
I said you can be a dumb leader, you can never be a stubborn leader. So you don't have to know the technology as long as you surround yourself with technology.
Right.
Listen to them, and you can fill in the gap of business acumen. And that creates a great combination and a good CIO.
So there may be a frustration out there then saying these technical people, they don't get how to operate this like a business, or they don't get the business. So we're going to do something radical by bringing somebody who knows the business.
Well, that's a different question. You're solving a different problem, right?
Ah, okay.
So if the technology folks are not figuring out how to go and learn the business and be totally immersed in that, then that's a problem.
Okay.
So you can solve that problem in a lot of different ways. But I do think that you have to have that going both ways. I think some of the team here said that we all have programs, like we run a digital IQ program for our business executives called Executech. So the whole curriculum of stuff they have to go and learn, so they understand the basics, right? I think like Wafaa said, we probably have 4 or 5 modules. One is security, one is agile, and all the different things. But that gets you skin deep in many ways. It gets you to ask the good questions. But we've also introduced now a similar curriculum for the technology leaders to make sure they understand the nuts and bolts of how the business operates, how we make money, how we interact with our customers, and all of the other attendant pieces as well.
So that ties to another question then, which is, if I'm a technical person and I want to move up, and I want to become a leader in the IT organization or in the digital organization, what should I work on? What skills should I work on building, and how can I do that? I'm sure you get these questions from your people all the time, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say there are the obvious ones, which is really understand your business, understand your industry, listen to your investors' calls. There are so many resources out there. Listen to the investors' calls, anything. If you're a publicly traded company, if not, whatever reports are out there. If there is anything you don't understand, take notes, go ask. Seek help. People are really happy to mentor on the business side, so pick someone from your company or outside. But the other key thing is, and I cannot emphasize it enough, is communication and storytelling. Whatever job we're in, you have to tell stories, we have to communicate, we have to stand in front of the board, and different constituents, by the way. They're the board, they're the management team, they're potentially external shareholders, sometimes it's customers. So storytelling, communication, presentations, all that stuff, those are very, very, very critical soft skills, and it's never too early to start learning them and practicing them.
Any other thoughts?
No, I agree. Very similar. I think the communication, absolutely key. Learning the business, submerging yourself, customer visits, field trips, right? All of that. Very, very similar to what Wafaa said. I think you hit on all the major points. But without you learning the business, and I don't think you're going to have the credibility with the business, and why should they listen to you? So having that's acumen is very, very important.
Yeah, I'll just add one additional point. I agree with that entirely. I meet with 180 graduate engineers that we hire every year, usually in 2 tranches. And I always get that question or a similar question, George, which is, well, how can I get your job, or how can I become, a senior technology leader? And I look out at the faces, right? They're all like 22 or whatever age they are, and I go, I'm going to spot everybody in the room with technical brilliance. So I'm going to assume everybody is technically brilliant. And what will differentiate those who make it up into senior levels will be your people interaction skills, your interpersonal skills, your empathy, and all of those things as the most important factor.
And that starts from, certainly you need them as you grow, but that starts from the beginning too,
From
right?
the beginning.
Being a good team member, all this stuff. Yeah, fantastic.
And
So,
George, I just
yeah,
wanna,
go ahead. Yeah.
I look, just kind of echoing what they say, think of it as a staircase. First step is your business acumen. You got to know business better than business themselves. Then that's communication. Communicate clearly in a non-technical way. And then the relationships. I think if you kind of follow that methodology, then you get into from a technologist to a business leader.
Okay. So let's look forward now a little bit. Right, you've all been in this world for a while. Let's just say a couple of decades. You can decide what that means. If we look 10 years from now, as fast as everything's moving, if we look 10 years from now, how's the CIO's job going to be different in 10 years than it is now?
I'm not sure there's going to be a CIO job in 10 years. I think they said that 10 years ago too, though. I do think that you're seeing so many people enter businesses these days with technical acumen, right? Because they've grown up, people call them digital natives, or people who are, my son started up as a video game guy and then got him interested in computers and so forth. But what I would say is that I think that it'll be dramatically changed. I think that in our world, at least at Liberty Mutual, data and machine learning is going to be absolutely central to technology. I think many of the things that we've struggled with over the last several years, even a couple of decades, those problems have kind of gone away. What I mean is, if you think about it, a decade ago, there was no such thing as cloud computing, right? Half of the time you spent was figuring out how to order the right computers and the right storage and the networking gear, and spend gobs of time and effort trying to configure them and connect them together and all that stuff. That's gone. You don't need to do that anymore. So you begin to take away all the kind of the scaffolding and the things that used to be the primary goal of technologists, and suddenly you're faced with, really, it's all about the digital and the data and the interaction with the customer. And I think that's where many, many more people will enter the workforce with that skill set that allows them to do that as the tools continue to mature. And as, you'll still need software engineers, but they'll be doing different things at different levels like they always have, but you'll have way more armies of folks doing the stuff that's at the customer interface or at that coalface level, I think. So will there be a CIO? I'm not sure you're going to need it, but we'll see.
Well, and let me push on that just a little bit, because I've certainly seen several generations of BI tools that all promised that the CEO would run their own queries from the desk. And it's never happened, right? No. And because there's a little effort that needs to go into learning these things, right? So how close, James, are we actually going to get to what you just said, right? Where there's no IT department and the people are just going to do their own stuff. And what would be the big hurdle you got to get over to make that happen?
I don't think that we won't have technologists and software engineers, but I think they'll be so embedded in the business that they may not report up through a CIO per se. Gotcha. I think that you'll still need all that focus and all those things, but as we move forward, I think there might be some differences. As technology really emerges, as I mentioned this morning, the powertrain of the business, whereas in the past it wasn't. Right. There's so many businesses now that technology is the engine, and you can decide how you want to tune it and whatnot, but it's not just something that's off to the side that we'll get to.
George, my prediction is there will be a lot more CEOs strategy officers, commercial officers coming out of the technology world. So that you're going to see that. It's already happening, but you'll see that happen a lot more. I think the second change you'll see that a lot of and you see that in your CMOs are becoming more and more digital savvy, or they are digitally savvy, and obviously they are also taking a lot of the technology decision along with the CDO, CIO, right? And you will see that continuously amplify where supply chain officers, commercial officers, all very much, and CFOs be a lot more tech savvy and be a close partner in the technology transformation.
And Wafaa, I cut you off.
That's okay. I buy into the idea of technology will be embedded because we're already seeing it. I think more evolution towards P&L owners. That's definitely, we started to see that happening. It's going to continue to happen more. I would say risk managers as well, because technology risk is a big topic. It will be emphasized around that, and more strategists in the way the roles and how the businesses are enabled. So I think we're going to see maybe it's kind of a slight change in how the executive teams are organized. And we will know that we're making progress when we stop talking about digital and it's just a business. The second thing, and maybe you can help us to find a different name, George, in your research, is I despise this thing about the business and IT. I call them the functional teams because the more language matter, and again, back to the communication and things like that. So we will stop talking about there is IT and there is the business. Functional teams, I don't know what they are. I try to call them functional teams. I still fail and call them business from time to time. We are business too. So again, the way we think is influenced, and the language and the way we talk matters as well. So those would be not only my aspirations, but things that I think we need to work on as well.
It's interesting, when we wrote this book, The Real Business of IT, we said this, or we said you don't talk about the business and yet every time we were writing things, we kept doing that, right? And you said the same thing. The one thing that I still believe in, though, is we said don't call the business your customer.
Oh, absolutely.
Because then you're immediately setting yourself up as the vendor, and you know how we treat our vendors, right?
And Desmos have made progress. We don't see that anymore. We don't see people calling internal partners, customers. Great. I don't see that much.
You want to make a prediction here, Vagesh?
No, look, I think if you look at technology, last 10 years, and the rapid change, next 10 years is going to be most exciting. And if you are a technologist today, it's probably the most exciting time to be. You see the impact of technology everywhere, whether it's on personal health, mental health, and to me, it's not going to change, George. So whether you call it CIO, you always need somebody in the organization who's looking forward, who's taking the organization forward, because pace of technology will be very, very fast. And as humans, you will, even though you can inject technology in your day-to-day work, you will get comfortable with it at some point. So you always need that thought leadership, that evangelist, that cheerleader who says, okay, guys, here's the art of the possible. Let's keep moving forward. Let's infusing more technology in the organization and keep advancing.
So I'm hearing that become more embedded, become more part of the business, but I'm also hearing somebody's got to run that specialty, right? You're never going to get rid of your HR department, but it might get different. So we've got to the question is how much belongs in this specialty and how much belongs, which is the same problem we've been fighting for decades.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, great, thanks. So let's just, we're reaching the end of our session. So I'd given you just a hard challenge to look at here. And that challenge is this. As somebody who has been able to take IT from being IT to being a true partner and a true leader of digital transformation in the business, and all four of you have done this, can you give one answer for how other leaders can do this, how to take IT and make them a true leader of digital transformation? But because it's MIT, and we don't do anything easy at MIT, you only get 10 words to do it. So what's the one piece of advice for turning IT into a leader of digital transformation, 10 words or less? Wafaa.
I'm going to give you two. Play offense.
Only two?
Play offense.
Works for you. Okay, we got some more words to spread around then. Manoj.
Yeah, think like a business leader would. Be a strategic thinker.
Mine would be set vision and values, step back and trust your team.
And last but not least.
Strategy is important, but start with common denominator and be human-centric.
Fantastic. It sounds like really wonderful advice. So please let's all thank these panelists for sharing their knowledge. And thank you all for being here. Such great questions. See you later.